What's up guys, Maelstrom here. If you enjoyed, then like and subscribe and leave a comment for the next part so I can keep on making these awesome videos for you guys. Chapter 4, Time to Hunt a Ninja Turtle. Part 2. What the fuck are you talking about? Asked Yagura, completely dumbfounded from what this apparent lunatic had just said. Who the hell was Donatello? This diode had just killed off his army and done it with a fucking smile on his face alongside his companion, and was now spouting about some nonsense that involved Ninja Turtles and a being known as Shredder. Alright, I've been with this dude most of his life and for my entire life. Yet this is the first time I haven't understood a single fucking word he's said, and I'm supposed to be the insane one, yelled out Okami in utter confusion. Even Yuki was sweat dropping at this, though not that anyone could see her. You become a turtle when you let the Sanbi take control and you use a bow staff as your main weapon. That leads me to believe that you are Donatello of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now tell where Raphael, Leonardo, and Michelangelo are so that I may slay them as well, yelled out a now completely incoherent Naruto. Just as Yagura was about to ask Naruto what the hell he was talking about, he sensed 3 other strange chakra signatures approaching him as he readied himself for attack. What he saw, however, completely dumbfounded him. Damn it, he found out about our existence. Alright turtles, let's try and take him out just like we did with Shredder in our new completely stupid movie, yelled a human-sized turtle wearing a blue headband that covered the top of his face except for the eyes. Cowabunga dudes, yelled out the turtle with the orange headband. This has to be one of the craziest genjutsus that I have ever had the displeasure of being stuck in. If I allow myself to be beaten by this unknown factor, I'll probably kill myself before being forced to live with that kind of humiliation, thought Yagura as he dispelled the genjutsu and noticed that his enemies had not moved at all, which was strange since he would have thought that they would have taken advantage of that temporary distraction to try and kill him. Why didn't you try and kill me while I was trapped in that genjutsu? Asked Yagura in disbelief as he thought that this might have been a double-layered genjutsu. That's simple, because I'm going to make you suffer for not only killing people simply because of something they cannot control, and for taking control of one of my fellow Jinchuriki, Obito Uchiha, stated Naruto calmly as he saw Yagura's eyes widen in surprise. What did you think? I wouldn't be able to sense that Yagura was under an extremely powerful genjutsu which allows you to talk through him? How do you know my name? Everyone in Konoha thinks I died, so how the hell do you know who I am? Yelled out Yagura aka Obito in anger and confusion. How did this man know who he was, and better yet, how did he know that Yagura was under a genjutsu? Only someone with eyes as strong or stronger than his own would be able to see through the genjutsu. You're probably wondering how my eyes were able to notice your genjutsu and how I know who you are, Obito-chan. It's simple really. I am a god, and nothing gets past the eyes of a god, yelled out Naruto as he released the rest of his chakra suppressing seals, revealing his full power. With his full power unleashed and it being changed into Yokai, the entire clearing that was a full mile in diameter was starting to rot away. The very ground they were standing on seemed as weak as glass. One step might plunge them to the very center of the planet. What the hell is this? His chakra pools are at least on par with the Nanabi, and it feels as though if I make a wrong move it will consume me along with Yagura, thought Obito as he was witnessing this from a safe location. Now the time for talking is over. It is time to die, yelled out Naruto as he flared his chakra. Then something unexpected occurred. Out of the back of his cloak came bone-like protrusions. They seemed to form in the shape of wings. 2 bird-like wings that seemed to have survived the test of time, if only barely. There was barely any flesh, and even then it was completely rotten while most of the bone was visible. The wings stretched out to about 4 feet in length each, and with a powerful flap he soared into the sky. Yagura was preparing for any sort of attack that might come his way, while Okami was just sitting on a rotten tree stump waiting for Naruto to kill Yagura and plant fear deep into Obito's heart so that he knows that they will be coming for him and he will not escape. Yagura waited for Naruto to perform some kind of jutsu when he saw Naruto suddenly dive bomb straight down covered in his black Yokai. Once he hit the ground there was no disturbance except for the small hole made by his scythe as the blade once again entered the ground. At first everyone thought it was a distraction until they felt the ground trembling under their feet. Suddenly an arm made entirely of bone rose up from the ground, and along with it a corpse comprised of only bone and nothing else. In its hands were throwing axes. Its skull held no eyes, only 2 holes that glowed a bright red as the flame within its eyes brightened. Following it were hundreds of other forgotten warriors that rose from the earth. Each skeletal ninja had their bones turn black until they seemed as though they were made from obsidian. As they walked forward towards their master, their bones began to separate and fly towards Naruto. Piece by piece, corpse by corpse, Naruto's form became covered in bones until he grew to the height of 50 feet and was compromised completely of bones. What seemed like muscle fibers were tiny bones pressed against each other, forming muscles that could move this giant beast. He appeared to be in the shape of a man that was completely white and seemed to have no skin hiding his muscles. The upper body was bare and filled with bones replacing muscles. The lower body was hidden by black loose pants that seemed to have been made by the same energy that was being used earlier. The face was completely blank. There were no eyes, mouth, nose, ears, or hair on the head. It was very strong considering the weapon it was able to carry. The weapon it was carrying was a giant hammer whose grip was 40 feet long and 5 feet wide. The grip itself was black with white wrappings that hung loosely. The hammer was a gold color with red markings that seemed like seals etched into the metal. This weapon was known as Kadabito no Hama, Hammer of the Ancients. Looks like Naruto is getting serious if he's using that. Huh? Stated Okami as he witnessed the monster lift the hammer above its head using both hands. Then using who knows how much strength it slammed it down and caused the earth to split into giant pieces of rubble while simultaneously kicking up a decent amount of dirt which served as cover. However, it did not cover the monster entirely, which Yagura thought to be rather foolish. Why would he try to create cover for himself if he cannot even use it for hiding that huge body of his? Thought Yagura, not understanding the beast's tactics, at least not until he felt a blade enter through the back of his shoulder and exit through the front and heard a voice that should be coming from ahead of him and not from behind. Did you really think that I would have had my summon create a diversion so that it could attack? Please, only I will have the pleasure of inflicting you pain and misery for those you have tortured and killed that look towards you for protection, yelled out Naruto as he revealed himself from behind Yagura, no longer in a Shinigami Henkin and now back into his regular outfit. But how? It thought you had become that monster in front of me? Asked Yagura, slightly afraid of his opponent, noticing that if that really was his summon, then he had summoned him without so much as breaking a sweat. Especially after killing all those ANBU. Didn't you hear me? I said that the being in front of you was my summon. I simply used a simple shunshin when all those bones had covered my body from view. Now hurry up and turn into the Sanbi. You won't be able to even scratch me if you don't, said Naruto in a mocking tone in an attempt to rile his opponent. Fortunately it worked. Alright, but try not to die too quickly, yelled out the now Sanbi-fied Yagura as he slowly turned into the giant three-tailed turtle. The Sanbi was easily larger than Naruto's summon. Its leg was taller than the summon by at least another 100 feet. The Sanbi was known for being the smallest of all the Bijus due to it being a turtle, but it was by no means the weakest. Now that Yagura had fully turned into the Sanbi, Naruto dispelled his unique summon and grabbed his two sides and ran straight towards the released Biju, his 7 tails behind him ready to attack and intercept any incoming attacks from the prey. The hunt had finally begun and it seemed as though they were having turtle stew tonight. Oh no you don't, I won't let you anywhere near me, yelled out Yagura as he started to go into his shell and sent his 3 tails in for an attack. While his head was inside the shell, he began charging up his Imari. Menacing Balsam thought that the tails were needed to help stabilize the charging up of the Imari. However, due to Yagura using the inside of the Sanbi's shell as a way to stabilize the chakra output and input, he was able to prepare his attack with his opponent being unaware. Naruto didn't slow down at all as he used his tails to block and fend off the Sanbi's tails. Since his tails were smaller in size, he merely focused his Yaokai into his tails in order to make them large enough to block the 3 tails attacking him. In all, it was a rather amusing sight, seeing as how a human had 7 huge tails coming out of his ass when each of the tails was bigger than he was. How the hell did he keep his balance? Simple. While using his Yaokai to make the tails bigger, that didn't mean he made them heavier by any means. He simply made them really huge and really light for convenience. Then the Sanbi sent its 3 tails in at once, thinking that the total force would be enough to crush the surprisingly powerful human. Too bad he was in for a shock as Naruto simply stopped using his tails and decided to merge his sights together and cut through the tails. This of course caused the Sanbi an untold amount of pain. For any Biju, they had a certain weak point that caused them a huge amount of pain and agony. For all the Biju, this weak point is their tails. If their tails were injured, the pain would be felt 100-fold. Of course, it was very difficult for someone to injure a tailed beast, let alone their tails, which has even stronger skin on it, causing most damage to not even affect it. Too bad this didn't apply to Naruto, as he simply cut through the tails while not cutting off any parts of the tails. He would never do that to a fellow Biju. since he has the same weakness as they do. However, that doesn't apply to simply cutting the tails. Though Naruto felt a small amount of pity for the Sanbi, he kept going and ran closer towards the opening of the shell. Yagura was in an unbelievable amount of pain from the injuries on his tails. It was almost enough pain to cause him to lose focus of the Imari, which would have probably killed him through decapitation and serious bodily injury. Luckily for him, however, he was able to keep up the attack and had charged it up enough by the time Naruto had reached the opening in his shell through which his head entered through. A bright flash was all Naruto saw before being engulfed by Yagura's Imari, which went all the way until the horizon before disappearing. Yagura, thinking that he had killed his opponent, reverted back into his regular body and started walking towards Okami in order to take him out. "Why aren't you preparing to attack or even defend yourself, scum?" asked Yagura, confused as to why this fool in front of him was simply lying there trying to take a nap instead of trying to fight for his own continued survival. His next words shook him to his very core. "You know, you shouldn't turn your back on your enemy. It could get you killed," stated Okami as he lazily waved off Yagura, trying to get back to his nap. Yagura quickly turned around and saw that his previous opponent, who he thought was dead, was very much alive and looked as though the attack he had just gone through was a simple love tap. "How the hell are you still alive? That attack was from point blank range. You shouldn't even be ashes in the wind," demanded Yagura as he fell back on his ass in fear from the monster in front of him. "That attack wasn't even a fraction of what my mate can do when she's really trying. So I guess it's time for me to torture the fuck out of you, huh?" said Naruto as he created chakra chains and somehow out and Senbon around both him and Yagura in preparation. Yagura attempted to run away by created several dozen Mizubenshin to confuse Naruto while he ran away. Too bad for him that he forgot about all those Senbons which cut into all those Mizubenshins and himself like a knife did to butter. All around Yagura were pools of water and small drops of blood, since Senbon aren't really weapons of large bloodshed. However, since Naruto knew where all the pressure points that inflicted pain and pleasure where he targeted all the ones that caused untold amounts of pain and simply walked slowly towards the paralyzed body of Yagura. "By now you've already been released from the genjutsu that was controlling you, yet you kept on fighting me. Why? You could have simply surrendered, but you chose to continue fighting me. Why?" asked Naruto in confusion. He knew it wasn't really Yagura's fault. He was simply a pawn in this long game of chess between Naruto and Obito. "Because I don't deserve to live after what I put my people through due to my own weakness. So please do me the favor of killing me before they try to use me once more. At least this way I can buy you a few years before they can try and capture you," stated Yagura now that he was in control of his paralyzed body. "It is the least I can do for a fellow brother of mine," said Naruto solemnly as he raised his scythe up into the air and brought it down towards Yagura's head. Blood flew out into the air as the wound released large amounts of the bodily fluid. Unfortunately, this blood did not belong to Yagura. The blood belonged to Obito, who had used Kamui to teleport to Yagura's location and sacrificed his right arm in order to change the trajectory of Naruto's swing. "Sorry, but I can't let you kill him yet." "This is good GAHHH," screamed out Obito as he felt his other arm get sliced off by Okami, who had conveniently woken up from his nap. For some reason he was unable to use his Kamui abilities to escape with or without Yagura. It was as though there was something preventing him from using that specific ability. "Did you really think that we would be dumb enough to let you live and escape from us so that you can cause even more annoyances for us later down the road? While we would easily be able to take down whatever plan you could possibly have, we'd rather not have to deal with it. So goodbye, and don't worry, we'll make good use of whatever information that's in that mind of yours," said Okami as he buried his claws into Obito's eyes and prominently ended his life. "So are you going to kill me now or what?" asked Yagura as he lied there, not knowing what to expect now that he was watching Okami feasting upon the brain of Obito Uchiha while Naruto was cleaning off his scythes using Obito's Akatsuki robe. "I was going to, but due to the information both myself and Okami are receiving from his brain, we are going to need you for something after all. As long as you accept, of course. So choose die for your crimes or work for me as part of something great," stated Naruto as he was rubbing his head to alleviate the migraine that was going through his head from the influx of memories. Time skip. Konoha 3 years later, graduation day. It had been 3 years since Naruto had left Konoha. It had been 3 years since Danzo had escaped along with a good amount of his root ANBU and had yet to be found. It had been 3 years since the public execution of the civilian council. And it had been 3 years since the Hokage and his family found out about what Naruto had been forced to go through because of their foolish trust in the goodness of the villagers. Today was the day set for the academy students to graduate and become genins if they passed the exams given to them by their respective Junin sensei. While the civilian portion of the class were barely genin level, those that came from clans had been trained by their families and were mostly Chunin level with a few exceptions. Anyway, currently sitting inside the classroom were the graduating class of Konoha. Among them were Hinata and Neji Hyuga, Tenten, Shinobu, Hikari Uzumaki Namikaze, Sayuri Uchiha, Choji Akimaki, Shikamaru Nara, Kiba Inuzuka, Rock Lee, Ino Yamanaka, and finally Sashimura. A lot of these students had changed over the years. Hinata had long hair tied up into a ponytail that reached her upper back. She wore mesh armor underneath her dark purple short-sleeved shirt. She had matured to a good size C-cup which did not go unnoticed by the rest of her class. On her arms she wore ANBU forearm protectors with black gloves that had a metal plate on the back. She wore tight-fitting black ANBU pants with shin protectors and combat boots instead of the traditional shinobi footwear. For her preferred weapon of choice she had a pair of claws sealed inside of each of her wrists that worked great with her family's taijutsu. She wore her forehead protector around her neck. She now stood at a height of 5'8". Neji wore the same clothes as Shippuden. Same thing with Lee, Tenten, Choji, Rock Lee, Sai, and Ino. Shino had the same haircut as always and wore the same traditional Abraham sunglasses. He wore a large black trench coat which reached all the way to his calves. Under the trench coat he wore a simple dark green muscle shirt with mesh armor underneath. He also wore black combat pants that had several pockets on each leg. In each pocket there were medical supplies along with some rations so that he could at least survive for a week without having to hunt. He had several seals inside of his jacket so that he could store kunai, shuriken, senbon, etc. However, the biggest change in Shino was the sadistic grin that was on his face. He asked Ibiki to train him in the ninja arts that pertained to torture and information gathering. He also had Eiko help him from time to time. Yay, that totally had nothing to do with his now somewhat sadistic tendencies. He was now at the height of 5'10" and had his forehead protector tied around his right arm. His specialized weapons were two hidden knives under his wrist that were hollow. He could fill them with bugs and then inject them into the enemy. Hikari had cut her hair short so that it now only barely reached her shoulders, her lips now sporting a minuscule amount of red lipstick. She wore mesh armor underneath a black long-sleeve shirt with a red sleeveless hoodie on top. She wore black combat pants that also had as many pockets as Shino's, but within each pocket was material necessary for finjutsu. She had seals all around her arms and legs which contained kunai, senbon, shuriken, etc. Though her figure was mostly hidden by her loose clothing, she had actually developed rather well. Like Hinata, she was also at a C-cup breast size and they were both still growing. For her special choice of weapons she had chains along her arms which could be used rather effectively with her taijutsu style. She now stood at the height of 5'9" and had her forehead protector around her left leg. Sayuri had grown out her hair to look like her mother's but wore it in a ponytail with two bangs framing her face for missions and spars. She wore a white karate gi that was open down the middle revealing her mesh armor and bandages that covered her chest from view. She wore tight-fitting black shorts that showed off her ass along with ANBU shin guards. She wore regular ninja sandals and had two swords on her hips. One had a light blue almost white handle with a gray sheath while the other had a red handle with an orange sheath. They seemed to be standard katana but they were so much more when used in battle by Sayuri. She stood at the same height as her friend Hikari and had her forehead protector on her right leg. Kiba had grown out his hair to seem like a mane and kept it in a ponytail behind reaching all the way to his mid-back in length which resembled a certain super pervert. He wore a fur-long coat made out of bear fur that reached down to his thighs in length. This special kind of bear fur could only be found in the Forest of Death. He had a scar on his face that started from his left cheek and ended all the way to above his right eyebrow. For pants he wore ANBU pants with scrolls attached to the sides of his legs. He wore combat boots that looked like they had claws claws on the end of where the toes would be. He simply wore mesh armor underneath the fur coat instead of a shirt. He stood at 5'11" and wore his forehead protector as a belt. All of them were currently talking about random subjects as they waited for their academy sensei to arrive and read off the list of the team placements. It was no secret that Sayuri, Hikari, and Hinata all wanted to be on a team with each other since they were rather good friends during the school years and had excellent teamwork, which was shown during their team spars. Although Hinata would have also been content being on a team with her boyfriend Shino, she knew that she couldn't argue with the placements. Yes, Hinata was dating Shino and did not have some fanatical crush on Naruto. She and Shino had become rather good friends during the academy, and eventually one day Shino had asked her out on a date when they were 14. Obviously the date went rather well and they were a couple ever since. It helped that both Shibuya and Hayashi Hyuga were old friends back in the day. Neji currently had his arm around Tenten's shoulder while she rested on his chest during the group conversation. They had been dating since age 13 and their relationship had been going rather well since then, and by well I mean they were rarely seen without each other. Who would have thought that Neji could have been so clingy? Ino was rubbing her fingers through her boyfriend's hair as he was taking a nap on her lap. Yup, Ino was dating Sai Shimura, biological son of Danzo Shimura and former root agent, and she was the reason why Sai regained his emotions that he had lost so long ago. When Sai was first admitted into the class, most people tried and failed to get anything out of him. Fortunately for him, Ino wasn't most people and she just wouldn't stop trying to get some kind of emotion out of him. After a certain survival exercise they had apparently become a couple, considering that when they exited the forest of death they were both covered in blood and guts, yet she was just holding on to his arm lovingly and he had his blade in his hand with a small smile on his face. The group thought when they saw this was only Ino. Rock Lee was currently trying to get his eternal rival to accept his challenge. His rival, amazingly enough, was actually Shikamaru. Though Shikamaru wasn't super muscular or motivated, that by no means meant that he was weak. Because of what happened with Naruto years ago, the clan heads decided to really up their training so that they would be prepared for Naruto's eventual revenge. So currently Shikamaru had mastered half of his clan's special techniques and knew a total of 20 jutsus that were useful in about any situation, which is how he was able to take on Lee during their spars. Also, since he kinda resembled Kakashi in laziness, Lee decided they were destined to be rivals. Yup, poor Shikamaru. This was the scene that Iruka had arrived in on when he finally arrived to his graduating class. He was proud of each and every one of his students. He knew that they would be able to survive the horrors of the ninja world. Though for most of the civilian-based students in the room he figured that they would probably stop at Chunin and settle down soon after. Alright everyone, calm down so that I can read off the team placements, yelled out Iruka using his weird big head jutsu thing. I would label it as a Kekkei Genkai since it would seem as though he is the only one that could do that. Luckily for him he only needed to use it once for today, since the sooner he got through this the sooner they could meet their new senseis. Alright, now team 1 will be started out Iruka before he was somehow mentally blocked out by some omniscient powerful being until he reached team 7. Yup, being the author rules. Team 7 will be Hikari Uzumaki Namikaze, Sayuri Uchiha, and Hinata Hyuga. Your Junin sensei will be Fugaku Uchiha, stated Iruka as he received the attention of those whose names he had just called out. Fugaku had returned to active duty after what was known as the Naruto incident and decided to become a Junin sensei for these specific 3 genins out of the blue. Of course Minato accepted his request but was no less confused nor stunned by this than anyone else except for the Uchiha family and surprisingly the Hyuga family, though no one noticed their reaction or rather lack thereof. Team 8 will be Neji Hyuga, Tenten, and Rock Lee. Your Junin sensei will be Mato Guy, stated Iruka as he felt a chill go up his spine just like Neji and Tenten did when they heard that name. Lee on the other hand was cheering about youthful senseis and the like. Kami have mercy on their sanity. Ah, who am I kidding? When you're a ninja you barely have any of that anyway, and adding Guy into the mix will simply shatter it. Oh well, if their minds break I can rebuild them. I hope. Team 9 will be Kiba Inuzuka, Shinobu, Choji Akimaki. Your Junin sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi, stated Iruka as he continued to read off the placements of the teams. Team 10 will be Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, and Saishimura. Your Junin-sensei will be Kurenayuki, stated Iruka with a slight blush on his face as he imagined a certain black-haired scarlet-eyed genjutsu mistress. A sneeze was then heard from the hallway. Well, now none of you are in my class and I will do you the favor of not boring you half to death with a speech on how the ninja world really is, because if you don't get it by now then you aren't for to be a ninja. Anyways, see ya, there is a ton of alcohol and a horrible hangover with my name on it, stated Iruka as he began to leave his class in favor of a few drink of alcohol until he was sent flying out the window due to the door smashing into his face and ending him flying thanks to a certain green beast. YOSH. Team 8, come with me. It is time for us to be reunited. Youth, yelled out Guy as he did his horrifying pose of terrorizing youth. You see, when Minato changed the graduation year for the genin, Guy's team had to go back to the academy and graduate with the rest of the group. This didn't mean that he stopped training them. This only meant he had to train them earlier in the day and later into the night to make up for the lost time spent in the academy. YOSH. Gai Sensei Lee. Gai Sensei Lee. And so began the horrifying and unbreakable genjutsu that was somehow transmitted throughout the classroom and through the walls of the building. A beach appeared behind the green duo with a beautiful sunset suffering in the horizon. Many attempted to break this genjutsu but none were able to succeed. Hikari grabbed a random rack off of the beach floor and had it skip over the water. Well, that's impossible, stated Hikari as her eyes widened slightly in response to the strange occurrence. Luckily Sayuri was smart enough to not use her Sharingan to try and see through the genjutsu and risk the image being permanently burned into the recesses of her mind. Shut the fuck up. We want to meet our senseis already, yelled out Hinata as she activated her Byakugan and got into her Juken stance with her claws equipped and releasing random sparks of lightning. Needless to say, Guy and Lee thought it best not to anger the terrifying Hyuga heiress. After all, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and they'd rather not see that proved right today or any other day for that matter. Team 9, hurry up and come with me, said Alma in a rather lazy tone as he smoked his cancer stick. Needless to say, Kiba, Shino, and Choji moved like the yandere when they heard their savior giving them a way out. They ran out of the room carrying their sensei in their arms, running faster Guy with his weights off. Team 10, follow me, stated Kurenai simply as she thought of a way to convince the Hokage of making Guy's signature genjutsu a kinjutsu so that it will never be used again except maybe for torture. Yay, that will get them talking. Team 7, meet me on the rooftop in 5 seconds. If you are late you automatically fail, stated Fugaku as he dispelled, revealing he was nothing more than a shadow clone. Immediately the girls in Team 7 performed their respective shunshin to arrive at their required locations. Rooftop. Fugaku had been waiting on the roof of the academy waiting for his clone to deliver his message and for his students to arrive. Soon enough 3 shunshins began to form. The first one he noticed was comprised of 9 balls of orange fire coming together and forming Hikari. The second one was comprised of an almost white flame in the shape of a wolf that began to stand on its hind legs and dissipate into Sayuri. The last one was a storm cloud that appeared about 20 feet in the sky that released a bolt of lightning that revealed the form of a certain Hyuga heiress. Impressive, and luckily for all of you, you made it with a full second to spare, said Fugaku with no small amount of pride in his voice. After all, he had helped train these 3 during their time in the academy. To him they were all like daughters to him, especially Sayuri since she was obviously his daughter. Now I want each of you to tell me about yourselves, such as your likes, dislikes, dreams and whatnot. Now someone start, said Fugaku as he leaned against the railing waiting for their responses. I'll go first. My name is Hikari Uzumaki Namikaze and I like a lot of things such as ramen, my friends and family, and training. My dislikes are the stupid villagers who can see past their own hatred, the now deceased civilian council, Danzo, rapists, and the 3 minutes it takes to prepare ramen. My dream is to find my Nisama so that we can be together again, said Hikari with a blush at the end as she thought of her Nisama. Yup, her love for her Nisama did not waver in the slightest. If anything, it grew more apparent to those around her and she wasn't afraid to admit it. It even got to the point that many of the ANBU and her friends started calling her the brother complex. Not that she minded. Hell, she actually liked the nickname. Good, now who's next? Asked Fugaku, having already known all of this beforehand. He knew everything about his precious genin already but decided to let them talk since this was how introductions usually went. At least that's what Kakashi told him. I'll go. My name is Sayuri Uchiha. My likes are my friends, my family, tomatoes, and wolves. My dislikes are rapists, those who betray their family, and prophecies. My dream is to reunite with a certain silver wolf and have a nice large loving family, after I become a kick-ass kunoichi, stated Sayuri with an air of confidence and a tinge of pink on her face as she touched her precious necklace, thinking of the one who stole her heart without even trying. Alright, I guess you gotta save the best for last. My name is Hinata Hyuga. My likes are most of my family, cinnamon rolls, the one who has done my family a great kindness, my friends, and my boyfriend Shino. My dislikes are the caged bird seal, ignorant fools who are too prideful to see when they are mistaken, and rapists. My dream is to one day repay my debt to one who has done my family the greatest kindness I could have asked for, said Hinata with a few tears at the end. Alright, now that introductions are out of the way, meet me on Training Ground 7 tomorrow morning at 8 so that I may give you your true genin test. Dismissed, said Fugaku in a militaristic tone as he disappeared in a shunshin that was the one unique to Konoha, which was just a bunch of leaves covering your body till you dissipate from view. Well, since we got the rest of the day to waste, how about we go get some lunch at that one barbecue place in the Akimichi district? You know how great their food is, suggested Hikari as they all started walking down the side of the building. Ever since the Hokage upped the required knowledge needed for the academy students if they wish to graduate, so now every genin that graduated knew the tree walking and water walking exercises along with the basic 3 jutsus, along with the Tajukage Kunai no Jutsu and the Tajukage Shuriken no Jutsu plus one of the elemental clones. Of course, if the civilian-based students knew all of this, then imagine what the Clan Air students knew. Next morning at Training Ground 7, Hikari, Sayuri, and Hinata were standing in front of their Junin sensei so that they could take their final test before becoming fully fledged genin. Well, normally this would be when I would tell you all to perform some random task that would require teamwork to accomplish, but since I haven't had my fucking coffee yet and since the 3 of you are already great at working together, I see no point in doing so, stated Fugaku with a long yawn, trying to rid himself of his drowsiness without his morning coffee and so far failing. 3 shit drops were the responses he received from his cute genin. Geez, you sure can be lazy when you wanna be, huh? 2-san, stated Sayuri with her sweat drop steadily decreasing in size. Let it be known that without his morning coffee, Fugaku could rival Inara in laziness if he didn't have his troublesome wife to keep him in line. Anyway, let's go and get our first C-rank mission as a team and hope that Murphy's Law doesn't make us its bitch today, said Fugaku as they all headed towards the cage tower to pick up their first mission as a genin. During the academy they had to do D-rank missions to build up teamwork. Outside of the academy are C-rank and above. The highest mission a genin squad will be allowed to take is B rank. If a mission were to change ranking in the middle of its completion, then it would be up to the Junin in charge to decide whether or not they can complete the mission or abort it. Once they arrived, they saw that the Hokage was about to prepare a Katen Jutsu to burn all of the fucking paperwork. Honestly, it's like it multiplies every time he looks away. Whenever he finished with one document, it would be like 2 more replaced it in the ever-growing pile. Luckily for the paperwork, Team 7 chose that exact moment to walk in and save them. Hokage-sama, Team 7 reporting for a C-rank mission, stated Fugaku, snapping Minato out of his insanity and saving the lives of hundreds of documents. Minato blinked for a few moments before sighing in a depressing manner before grabbing a random mission out of his mission files. Alright, how's this? You need to escort and protect a bridge builder from Konoha all the way to Nami no Kuni until he finishes the construction of his bridge. Do you accept? Asked Minato in a serious voice as he turned on his cage mode. They accepted the mission without complaint and met their client within seconds. The meeting left a lot to be desired. A lot. At least they now have a week to before they begin the mission due to Hikari sending him to the hospital via her chakra chains, which were gold in color with a hint of red due to the Kyuubi's chakra slight influence on her own chakra. In Yuzugaki around the same time. Alright, one of my spies has found Gato to be causing trouble in Nami no Kuni. I want you along with Haku to go and take him out. If any other ninjas get in your way, do what you wish with them. Just make sure neither of you die. Understood? Asked the Yuzugaki with a smile on his face. And why wouldn't he when he had a certain white-haired vixen's head bobbing up and down in between his legs? Hi Yuzukage-sama narukoi, replied Haku and Zabuza as they went on their way. The sight had not bothered them since this was now a regular occurrence. Ever since Yuki got out of her seal, she and Naruto had been going at it like rabbits, especially in his office. Man, I hope Haku-chan gets back soon so that we can have a threesome. What do you think, Narukoi? Asked Yuki as if she hadn't just swallowed a gallon of his seed in the past hour or so. Man, ever since I marked you two as my mates you've been sucking me dry. If this keeps up I'll die the way most men can only dream of, having sex with bombshell wives. Kami, I'm the luckiest man in the world, stated Naruto as pull Yuki back onto his cock, continuing her blowjob marathon with Haku and Zabuza. Alright Haku, let's get this mission over with quickly so that I can get back to my Harem before she decides to melt my balls off from being away for so long, said Zabuza with no small amount of fear. Haku merely giggled at the thought of her surrogate mother doing that to her surrogate father. After the defeat of Yagura, Zabuza and Mai married and were now settling down, with Zabuza taking missions while Mai being a housewife. Yup, she was living the dream. Whatever you say to San, you should probably get Konchan a gift if you plan to keep your special friends you seem so attached to, teased Haku as she kept giggling, much to the ire of a certain swordsman. Man, it's been what, a couple months since Naruto fully became the Juubi? I can't believe how much he's changed since then, stated Zabuza as he remembered how Naruto used to act compared to how acts now. Now the kid was a shameless pervert who had sex in front of his ninja. Though only Haku, Naruto, and Yuki know exactly why his personality changed when he gained his final tail. Flashback no jutsu. Naruto's 15th birthday. It had been 3 years since Naruto defeated Yagura and had those that survived and lived in Kiri move into Uzumaki. It had also been about 3 years since Naruto had become the Uzumaki, considering he was the best candidate for that. He was currently taking the day off due to his power fluctuation. However, what happened next was something he would have never thought of happening. As he was feeling the intake of a tail's worth of chakra, he was suddenly taken into his menscape. What was to happen in the short minutes to come? Naruto would break his heart and cause him to become depressed once again inside Naruto's menscape. Damn, what the hell am I doing inside here now? Asked Naruto as he rubbed his head from the slight headache he was feeling. However, when he looked around he noticed that this wasn't the regular part of his menscape that he usually spent his time in. Looking around he saw that he was inside of Okami's private space of his mind. I guess time's up, spoke Okami from in front of Naruto. He stood there in his regular clothing but with a sad expression on his face. What do you mean by that, brother? What do you that time is up? Asked Naruto, having a horrible feeling in the pit of his stomach. He had a very bad feeling about what his brother meant. We are gaining the powers of the Juubi, but you must have realized that there can only be one Juubi, which means we have to fight to the death for control. The loser is absorbed by the winner. After all, in the end there can only be one Naruto. Okami explained Okami as he got into his fighting stance, his knees slightly bent with his back straight and his arms in front, his left arm straight in front while his right arm was mostly behind his head with his fist right next to his face. What? Hell no, I won't fight you, yelled out Naruto, adamantly not wanting to fight the one he considered his brother. Too bad it wasn't his decision to make. Okami charged at him regardless of whether or not he would fight. As Okami threw punch after punch and kick after kick, Naruto simply dodged or blocked his attacks. He wouldn't even try to counter him, and that was pissing him off. Naruto, stop being an idiot. We have to fight. Don't you dare disgrace me with not even trying, damn it. I deserve better than that, yelled Okami, trying to get Naruto to see some reason. Having heard what he had to say, Naruto couldn't find it in himself to deny Okami this last fight. So without further hesitation, Naruto punched Okami in the gut and then roundhouse kicked him in the face. Even though tears were pouring down his cheeks, Naruto couldn't allow himself to simply lose. It would be an insult to his brother, and he would be damned before he insulted those close to him. Okami pulled himself back up and charged at Naruto with his claws raised for a slash that Naruto knew better than to block. So he dodged, and good thing too, because when Okami's claws hit the ground it created a small crater. In retaliation, Naruto closed the gap between them and raised his leg before bringing down on Okami's head faster than he could dodge, but slow enough for him to try and block. Too bad Naruto's leg strength was higher than Okami's arm strength, which was made apparent when the bones in his arms shattered along with parts of his skull when his kick finished its swing. However, Naruto jumped back knowing that the fight wasn't even close to being over. Okami simply got back up after a few moments of him healing. Now that taijutsu is out of the way, how about ninjutsu? Said Okami as he started to collect chakra into his hands as a ball of black chakra formed with an outer ring of what looked like condensed air. Shit, said Naruto in distress, knowing the jutsu that Okami was going to use all too well. He started to channel chakra through his feet as he summoned a wall of obsidian up from the ground in order to shield him from Okami's next attack. Dairosen Ringu, great spiraling fear wheel, yelled out Okami as he threw the jutsu towards his brother. fire. Naruto, knowing the obsidian wouldn't be enough, also covered himself in the Susanoo with only the ribcage for protection. Then there was a huge explosion, launching Naruto with his ribcage armor barely holding up until he finally landed on his back with blood dripping out of his mouth. As he stood up, he said only one word, "Susanoo," said Naruto before he was completely covered in his perfect Susanoo form, which easily stood taller than even Yuki in her Kyuubi form Naruto had taken to calling it since he was little. His Susanoo was in the shape of a samurai, just like all Susanoo were, but instead of a regular mask, his had the face of a wolf with a rinnegan in its eyes. Instead of regular katanas for blades, his used two extremely large scythes that were each held by two hands. His had 4 arms, 2 coming out of each shoulder, one scythe held towards the ground with another held towards the sky. The one on top had a black blade with a white circle, while the one on the bottom had a white blade with a black circle. This were the blades yin and yang. This form was that of pure balance, yet it had no equal in power. A bit hypocritical, don't you think? Shit, looks like I'll have to go all out as well, said Okami with a grin on his face as he started to change. Instead of using the same move as Naruto, he began to change into his Biju form. Once his transformation was complete, he was then Yuki's Biju form, but only slightly. He was still smaller than Naruto's Susanoo, but that didn't mean that he had no chance against him. With his tentails waving behind him, he began his charge towards Naruto, who also charged towards his brother. The fight that ensued would have destroyed most of the continent if fought outside of their shared landscape. Okami was biting down on one of the arms while his tails were grabbing a hold of his other arms to keep him from using his scythes. Too bad for him, Naruto simply opened his wolf's mouth, which released a gale of wind blades charged with lightning chakra to overload the nerves and cause Okami to loosen his grip on his arms ever so slightly, but that was more than enough for Naruto, as broke free from his grip and sliced off 3 of his tails, as well as leaving a few deep cuts on Okami's body. Normally these wounds would have healed within seconds, but due to Naruto using his special chakra Yauki, these wounds would take much longer to heal. Okami, though feeling huge amounts of pain throughout his body, jumped away from Naruto and began charging up his Bijirama just as Naruto dematerialized his swords and created a few Kamui shuriken and launched them the moment Okami launched his Bijirama. While the shuriken absorbed a good portion of the attack, some of it still went through and damaged Naruto's Susanoo. They were both running out of energy and fast. While they may technically be gods, they only had enough chakra put together for one god, and they were both using it up like crazy. "Hey, one last attack, Rother. You better put your LL into T," said Naruto in between pants. His only response was a grin from Okami as he began charging up his full-powered Bijirama at a pretty fast rate. Not one to be outdone, Naruto performed the hand signs to a jutsu that he could only perform while in his perfect Susanoo state. As all 6 of his hands formed the various hand signs to this jutsu, each of his arms started to be surrounded in his silver flames. Once he had completed the hand signs, he slammed his 2 scythes together to form one with a blade that continuously looked like a lava lamp of white and black coloring. The scythe also became engulfed in its silver flames. "Bijirama / Mujutsu," yelled out each brother as they launched their attacks at each other. As the Bijirama closed in on Naruto's form, he slowly swung his scythe up with the blade facing up before a large straight silver wave of his Yaukai rose from the ground and cut through the Bijirama and cut Okami in half. Once the wave of energy dispersed, Naruto was on the ground with his right knee touching the ground as he tried to catch his breath. His Susanoo dispersed at this point. He then got up and headed towards his brother and saw him back into his regular form, except he was nearly cut in half with a straight jagged burn mark going down from his head to his legs. "Hoaxal like os damn LLMS, you brother," said Okami as the light from his eyes slowly started to fade. His body was also starting to turn into chakra, starting from his legs, slowly moving up. Of course his chakra was a pure black color. Naruto could only fall to his knees and let out silent sobs at seeing the one that he truly considered family disappearing right before his eyes because of himself. "Don't blame ourself, why you diot. There was nothing why you or I could have done. Just promise me one thing," stated Okami as his chest was now being turned into chakra. "Anything for you, brother," said Naruto as he looked straight at his brother with tears cascading down his cheeks and noticed one thing. His brother was crying. "Destroy Kekane for the both of us. Make sure none of those bastards who ruined our lives go unpunished, preferably by ripping their intestines out through their mouths," chuckled weakly the now almost completely consumed Okami. A nod was all he received and was all he needed. He smiled and said one last thing. "Goodbye, Naruto." Okami, It's been fun while it lasted. With that he was gone and his chakra was now merging with Naruto. Of course Naruto didn't notice this due to his vision being completely clouded by his tears as he screamed out his anger and sadness into the air, as he cursed the world for what had happened, as he cursed himself for what he had done. A few hours later, back in Naruto's regular moonscape, as Naruto reappeared inside the regular moonscape that he and Yuki shared with a few changes to his body. He now had black patches in his hair coupled with slightly longer fangs. His eyes now holding the Juubi instead of the Rinnegan. However, the most noticeable change were the tentails that were silver with patches of black. His eyes were not within view since his head was down with his bangs shadowing his face. Naruto, I'm so sorry, said Yuki in a comforting tone as she held him in her arms and put his face into her rather impressive bust. Though it was not to arouse him but rather to comfort him. She could see that what he needed right now was someone he could trust so that he could let his emotions out. And let them out he did the moment his head came into contact with her warm breasts. He let out all of his pent-up anger and sadness. He cursed at everything wrong in his life until he finally calmed down. He knew that Okami would not want him to be acting like a child throwing a tantrum. He would want him to move on and take their revenge on Kanya. He couldn't very well do that moping around. I'm fine. I'll be fine after a while. Besides, he's a part of me now. We are one being now. Besides, I feel like he's telling me to do something really important right now, said Naruto with a perverted grin at the end. Oh, and what would that be? Asked Yuki, completely oblivious to Naruto's intentions until she felt him grope her ass and French kiss her into bliss. Lemon alert. Fuck your brains out, Yuki Harem, stated Naruto as he ripped apart her clothing and before going face deep into her pussy and plunging his entire dick straight into her mouth all the way until his balls were slapping her face with each thrust. Of course Yuki didn't mind at all since this is what flipped her switch. She loves to deep throat his dick to point of her choking on it, and once her flip was switched she went into heat like a bitch. Not even an Inuzuka woman could match her lust and horniness and need to be dominated by her alpha. Slurp. Slurp was the only noise to come out of Yuki as she sucked on his dick with such a vigor that nearly got Naruto to release his sperm into her stomach. Too bad Naruto wouldn't allow himself to come before her, so he held on to his sperm and proceeded to eat out her pussy while thrusting his fist into her asshole all the way up to his mid-forearm. This of course completely caused Yuki to squirt all over his face while he came at the same time, painting her stomach white with the sperm. Of course her stomach did not bulge at all due to her practice with drinking down his sperm. It would take a whole deep-throating marathon for her stomach to bloat. Once he stopped coming he pulled out of her mouth and anus, then created 2 shadow clones. Before Yuki could say anything she had her mouth filled with a shadow clone's cock as she felt her pussy and anus impaled by his huge dicks. Fuck. Yuki Harem, you're so fucking tight, yelled out Naruto as both he and his clone kept on thrusting into her 3 fucking holes. They keep this up for hours and hours until he marked her and passed out along with her. The mate mark on her neck was a red fox with 9 tails comforted by a silver wolf with 10 tails. Flashback no Jutsukai. Thinking about Naruto's slight change she unconsciously touched the mate mark on her neck. The mark looked like a silver wolf with 3 tails being comforted by another silver wolf with 10 tails. Alright Haku, we've almost arrived to Nami no Kuni, so let's rest here. I have a feeling we're going to need our strength for tomorrow, ordered Zabuza as he and Haku set up camp, had some food and then created a few clones before going to sleep. Too bad this mission was gonna last longer than they would have wanted due to an unplanned meeting with a certain Konoha team. Chapter 5 Azu and Konoha clash. Currently Team 7 had been walking down the path after having been dropped off by the boat. Their current formation was having Hikari in the front while Sayuri and Hinata were to the side of their client Tazuna while Fugaku was in the very back. Each one of them were alert and were expanding their sensor abilities to their maximum range. All ninja have at least a small range where they can sense chakra. Those that are called sensors however have ridiculously large ranges, and some of the most gifted sensors are even able to tell what a person is feeling. Fugaku had an average range of about 15 m radius. His Sharingan does not increase his sensor abilities since that is not one of its abilities. Hinata has a range of around 25 m radius thanks to her Byakugan. Sayuri surprisingly enough was a sensor just like her mother was and had a very impressive range of almost half a mile radius. Hikari had a range of only 50 m. larger than average thanks to the chakra sealed inside of her, but not as great as that of a censor's. Too bad she didn't inherit that from her mother, unlike a certain summon, though even if they had a range of only 10 m in radius they were able to feel the slight amount of chakra being used above them in the trees. Out of pure instinct and reflex all 4 of them launched a kunai, only 2 of them hit a karimi block of wood, immediately forming a protective circle around their client. They immediately took out their signature weapons, or in Fugaku's case a kunai. What lay before them was surprising to say the least. In front of them was Zabuza Momoki, the demon of the hidden mist, and he was currently being kicked in random locations by his daughter, who was calling him an idiot and a moron. "You idiot, I told you we should have simply avoided the group so that we could have been done with this mission, but no, you simply couldn't help yourself when facing the possibility of a god. Damn, fight," yelled out Haku as she continued to kick him while her was down. After falling on their faces, the 4 Konohanian and the 1 client got up and had huge shit drops on their heads. I may not be a ninja, but I've had the chance to look through the bingo book once or twice in the past couple of years, and I know that Zabuza Momoki isn't the level of ninja that can simply be kicked around by a teenage girl. Deadpan Tarzuna as he rubbed his eyes and pinched himself to make sure what he saw in front of him wasn't some kind of hallucination brought on by his overconsumption of alcohol combined with his old age. "So have I, and honestly I expected something, don't know more from him," stated Hikari as she was recovering from her earlier face plant. This thought was shared among her teammates, which was apparent by their nods. Now at this point Zabuza and Haku were both paying full attention to the ones that attacked them, and of course Zabuza got up without any injuries on his body. "Thank you, Anim Logic. Anyway, what are you two doing here? If you are here to interfere with our mission, then we will have to deal with you now," stated Fugaku as he activated his Sharingan. His mind was currently factoring in the dangers that these two presented themselves as. Zabuza himself was a known variable since most of his attacks were listed in the bingo book. However, Haku was an unknown variable. This girl was not listed anywhere in the bingo book and was not a known associate of Zabuza, at least not to those outside of Azu, but they don't know that. "Don't worry, as long as your mission is not to protect Gato, then you have nothing to worry about. As long as your team doesn't get in our way, then there won't be any problems," stated Haku as she began to form Hyouten Sevens around the Konohanen along with small orbs of fluid ice that she could control to make chains, whips, small shields, and can only be controlled by Haku. Even if there was another Hyouten user, except for Naruto and Yuki, they wouldn't be able to control these orbs. The tension in the air was so thick that one could cut it with a kunai, which is what Zabuza tried to do and found that it actually put up some resistance. "What the hell are you doing, Zabuza 2-san?" asked Haku with a perplexed look on her face. She honestly couldn't understand some of the things her father did sometimes. She was glad that Maiko-san often helped with Zabuza's idiocies, even if she did so through distracting him with sex. "Don't worry about it. Besides, I'm not too sure myself," stated Zabuza as he started rubbing his chin. With that said, the two of them started to walk away until Fugaku asked them a question. A question that would only make this mission take longer than they would have wanted. "What is that symbol on your Hitate?" asked Fugaku, inspecting the symbol more closely. He felt as though he had seen that symbol before. His genin felt the exact same way. "Oh, this is the symbol of Yuzugakure, the village hidden in the whirlpools," stated Zabuza, seeing no harm in telling that small tidbit of information. That is, until he got sent flying backwards thanks to a certain Uzumaki. Of course this wasn't the only reaction that was received. Sayuri had a small smile on her face that disappeared almost as it appeared. Fugaku was the same, except his eyes widened a little bit. Strangely enough, Hinata widened her eyes before subconsciously rubbing the back of her right hand with her left. "That's impossible. Yuzugakure fell years ago. It fell when my mother was still a girl, so how are you living there?" screamed out Hikari as she readied the chains on her arms for battle. Her mother had told her about what happened to her home village and was planning on taking her daughter to the ruins later on once she became a chunin. But now she was hearing that Yuzugakure was being run by a cage again, and she feared that it was simply someone trying to steal their family's secrets. Of course, after half a second after Hikari had finished her round, she was suddenly forced to jump back due to Haku causing 3 of her fluid ice orbs to change into fluent moving spears that pierced the ground where Hikari was just standing. "Is there a reason why you are attacking us now? If you do not cease your attacks now, we will be forced to respond with lethal force," stated Haku as all half the water in the area began to float around her. The wind also began to pick up around her as well, signifying her high affinities for each of those 2 elements. Thanks to Naruto's and Zabuza's training, she was now well versed in her Suiton, Futen, and Hyouten techniques. Hikari, stand down. These nin obviously have no ill will towards, and it would not be a good idea for us to cause a war between our two villages without just cause. Now stand down or else I'll have you doing D ranks for a year, stated Fugaku as he ordered his genin to stop fighting and to continue their mission. Fine, but this isn't over, yelled Hikari as she reapplied her chains and headed back towards her group. That is until a huge dragon made of water crashed into her, sending her crashing into a tree. That was when everyone noticed Zabuza coming out from where he was sent by Hikari with his huge blade straight out in front of him, pointing at Hikari. Don't you know it's fucking rude to attack a person without any fucking warning, yelled out Zabuza as several veins could be seen bulging around his forehead signifying his anger. Of course the share though of everyone besides him and Hikari was, isn't that exactly what you just? Alright, if it's a fight you want then it's a fight you're going to get, yelled out Hikari as she once again released her chains and started charging towards Zabuza. Seeing that she would need assistance, Fugaku went ahead to help her while sending Sayuri to fight the unknown nin. He left Hinata to protect the client in case anyone tried to kill him while they were fighting, so with that they went towards their respective opponents. With Haku and Sayuri, they decided to separate themselves from their respective teachers. Once they felt that they were far enough away, they stopped and simply sat down beside one of the trees. So who has that godly idiot been doing so far? Have you been keeping him in line for me along with Yuki-chan? Asked Sayuri as she leaned back onto the tree. She had known about Haku and Yuki being Naruto's mates for a while now. After all, she and Naruto stayed in touch thanks to the necklace he gave her. The necklace has a seal placed on it so that Naruto could teleport to her no matter where she was or where he was. So from time to time he would come and visit her. He would tell her about what had been happening so far in a zoo and with his other mates. She was also one of his mates and she had no problem with sharing him as long as she got her fair share of time with him. She saw his other mates as sort of her sister figures. So she and Haku and Yuki were close and almost never fought with each other. Well, it's been tough since he's merged with Okami, especially because of his stronger libido and his greater shamelessness. When we were receiving our mission he handed it to us while Yuki was sucking him off, stated Haku with a slightly jealous tone in her voice. At least you get to see him more than I do, responded Sayuri with a pout and no small amount of jealousy in her voice. That is until Haku decided to fix her mood by kissing her on the lips. Yup, all of Naruto's girls were bisexual and had no problem pleasuring each other when Naruto wasn't there to pleasure them. Yuri Lemon warning. You better enjoy cause I sure am while I'm writing this. There will be more of this later on in the story. Moaned out Sayuri into the kiss as she felt Haku's hands roaming around her chest, removing her gi and then the rest of her clothing before having her do the same. Now that there was no clothing getting in the way, Haku immediately went towards the 69 position where their equal Y proceeded to eat each other out. Sayuri could taste the sweet honey dripping out of Haku's pussy and into her mouth. She moaned into Haku's pussy as she was being eaten out, causing more shivers of pleasure to go throughout Haku's body. They moaned and quivered as they began to finger each other's anus to try to bring the other closer and closer to climax. I'm gonna coming, screamed out both girls as they released into the other's mouth, covering their face in their sweet honey. They slowly moved for their position and began clean each other's faces and mouths, tasting their own juices mixing with the others. This combination was almost as good as their mate seed. Once they were done cleaning each other's faces, they began to scissor each other. Also, Haku had taken the initiative and went straight for Sayuri's boobs and starting on her super hard nipples. At this point, all Sayuri could do was continue moving her hips and moaning loud enough to be confused for Haruno. So good, shoo good, screamed out Sayuri as she started to become incoherent. Not long after that they both came on each other. They continued this for a little while longer before getting dressed, giving each other one last kiss and tease, and heading back to their sensei. Yuri Lemon is now over with Hikari, Fugaku, and Zabuza. Currently Hikari was swinging her chains at Zabuza along with her chakra chains in order to skewer him for using a Suiton jutsu on her. Zabuza was keeping up with her rather easily and was able to deflect all of her chains with the 2 tanto he had sealed into his arms. He had these in case it would be a better decision to use them than his huge ass sword. Plus it doesn't take as much strength to use them. Fugaku had just arrived when Zabuza had jumped back and formed hand signs for his signature jutsu, Ninpo. "Kirigakure no jutsu!" yelled out Zabuza as he covered the entire area with a large amount of mist. This of course caused Fugaku to deactivate his Sharingan and channel chakra into his ears as he and Hikari stood back to back. Zabuza was a master at the silent killing technique, meaning that any hope of hearing his footsteps would be slim at best. Luckily he was able to hear a footstep right next to him that was not from Hikari and was able to block his downward sword strike. Too bad that Zabuza was strong enough that his blade simply cut through his kunai within a matter of seconds, cutting through his Junin vest and piercing skin. Luckily for him the cut wasn't too deep but would leave a scar nonetheless. Hikari took this opportunity to trap one of Zabuza's arms with her chains, thinking that he wouldn't be able to carry his large sword with only one free arm, and then sent her other chain to try and pierce a shoulder. That is until it was blocked by his Kubakira Kacho and her chain around his arm was cut off, but the chain was still around his arm, simply separated from the rest of her chain. That is until it turned into liquid metal and reattached itself to the rest of her chain. This earned her a "What the fuck did you just do look?" I guess you didn't know. I have a rare Kekkei Genkai called the Metal Release. It allows me to not only create metal out of the earth, but I can control any metal within a certain range. However, for some strange reason I am unable to control the metal inside of your blade. This leads me to believe that you have placed a seal on your blade preventing anyone except for certain people to use it, and by extension the metal it is comprised of. Am I correct? Stated Hikari, causing Zabuza's eyes to widen by a considerable margin. This girl was able to deduce the alterations had placed onto his blade thanks to Naruto, not that she knew it was him, and knew that it was a seal. Naruto had told him there were only few seal masters that could do this simply within a few seconds. Their levels are at least 8 and the highest is 10 for them to be able to deduce that quickly. Level 10 seal masters are able to see every single piece of a seal and what they mean. So far there are only 3 level 10 seal masters currently alive. One of them is Kushina Uzumaki, who became a level 10 seal master a year after Naruto had left Konoha. Naruto was the second level 10 seal master that was currently alive and had become a level 10 seal master a year before fully becoming the Juubi no Okami. The last level 10 seal master alive was another red-haired Uzumaki that was under the control of Orochimaru. The only reason she didn't use her seals against him was because he could kill her before she could. Minato was only a level 9 seal master and Jiraiya was only a level 8 seal master. They were both satisfied with their current level of expertise in the field. However, the difference between a level 9 and a level 10 was enormous. If one were to compare a level 9 with a level 10, it would be like comparing the difference in strength between wolf and a rabbit. When one reached level 10, the possibilities were as endless as their chakra pools. When you reached level 10, you would be able to create seals anywhere out of pure chakra and could alter their range depending on how much chakra you had. Once you reached level 10, you could change environments, create creatures of the elements, and even for as long as they can supply chakra, control nature itself. Hikari was currently a level 7 seal master and was making her way up to level 8. She was able to discern what could and could not be caused by a seal. While this seal was rather difficult to make, it was rather easy to make for those level 8 and higher. There were very few that could have been able to make this seal, meaning that there were other seal masters within Uzumaki. Little did she know that the Uzumaki made it a requirement for a ninja to be at least a level 4 seal master by the time they were genin. After that they could choose whether or not to continue advancing in the art. Most if not all of his nins decided to continue to work on seals whether or not they went slow or fast in their progress. In Konoha, the average Junin ninja was a level 5 seal apprentice at best, meaning that they were at least able to seal weapons inside of skulls and make explosive tags, but that was the most they could do. Anyways, back to the fight. Zabuza, having gotten over his initial shock, had sheathed his blade and went through hand signs as fast as he could. Water suddenly began to surround his body. "Suiton, Water Dragon no Jutsu!" yelled out Zabuza as the water around him formed a large dragon's head that charged towards Hikari. Hikari in response began to grab one of her pre-made seals in order to defend herself. The dragon neared closer and closer. She was about to activate the seal until the dragon was turned into ice mere feet in front of Hikari. When she looked to her left, she saw Haku with several wolves made of ice surrounding her. Each of the wolves had glowing blue eyes and each had 3 tails that released a chakra-filled mist that sucked up the chakra of those trapped inside of it, except for those the caster allows to go unaffected by it. This mist also sucks the chakra out of any jutsu, though depending on the jutsu would depend whether or not it would extinguish the jutsu. This jutsu was known as Hyouten, Ice Wolf's Haze of Death. Naruto helped with developing this. It was a heightened version of Naruto's chakra wolves that were just as deadly if not more. Alright, now that I have your attention, I propose a truce. Why don't we just go our separate ways, complete our missions, and not get in each other's way? Asked Haku as her wolves began to release more of the mist, creating a deadlier appearance as the ice on their teeth slightly melted, causing the drops to seem like the drool a predator would release when waiting to jump at its prey. Seeing the hungry looks on the wolves' faces, femHaku decided that it was time for them to pull back. That Naruto would not like it if he found out that his subordinates and those he considered as his family tried to kill each other. So he decided that agreeing to Haku's terms was the best course of action. Alright, we will accept this terms. We will be taking out leave now, stated femHaku as he started walking back towards the rest of the group. Though Hikari didn't want to retreat, she understood that if she disobeyed any other orders that she would seriously be reprimanded and possibly even removed from the ninja corps. Disobedience was not tolerated, and if she continued ignoring his orders then things would end badly for her. So she relented and followed her sensei back to the group. And you just couldn't help but be the mature one and just take the fucking high road, could you too, San? Yelled out Haku as her hair began waving around her back as her wolves directed their attention towards the now pale Zabuza. The moment he dared to look into his daughter's eyes, he knew that he wouldn't get out of this without getting a few new scars. Unless, well, it's just since Naruto ordered us to take out any threat that may come up during the mission, I was merely following orders. After all, you have to follow the Uzukage's orders, right? Said Zabuza as he began praying inside of his mind to Kami, hoping that she would buy that excuse. HMPH. Fine, I'll let this go just this once, but if you do that again without my approval then I'll tell my Kasan, said Haku with a dark smirk on her face. Zabuza immediately saw his entire life flash before his eyes as his mind processed what Haku had just said. If he thought that Haku was a devil, then his wife Mai was Jigoku hell in high heels. If he pissed her off and she so happened to be on her special day of the month, then he could very well be sent to the hospital for a good year or so. After a few minutes, Zabuza returned to the world of the living and immediately went down on his knees and begged Haku not to tell her mother. Luckily for him, she agreed on the condition that he teach her how to use Kyuubi Kirikacho. He knew she had a fascination with his blade and wanted him to hand it down to her. Of course he didn't want to that because 1. He would be out of a badass blade, and 2. He didn't want her to grow up too fast. Too late. Back in Uzugakure. Currently Naruto was having his clones do his paperwork while he and Yuki were planning their wedding. Naruto and Haku had already finished planning their wedding about a week ago because Yuki couldn't decide on what kind of cake she wanted. Haku just went with a white chocolate 7-tier cake so that they could feed all of their guests. The rest of the details would be a surprise. Now with Yuki, she was trapped between choosing either a red velvet cake or a triple vanilla cake. So then Naruto came up with a great idea. Hey, Yuki-Haim, how about we have the chef make it a sort of compromise, suggested Naruto as he tried to please his soon-to-be wife with the cake section. How about we have the chef make 1 tier red velvet and another triple vanilla and so on and so forth, stated Naruto with a smile on his face, inwardly hoping that she agreed so that they could finally be done with the wedding planning. He swore that if he wasn't a god and didn't already have silver hair, it would all be white by now. You know what, I think that's a good idea. Besides, this way I don't have to make you use your godly powers to combine the flavors of red velvet and triple vanilla, stated Yuki with an innocent smile on her face, while Naruto had an "are you fucking kidding me?" look. Though he destroyed the look almost as quickly as it appeared so as not to have Yuki change her mind. Nope, he wasn't going through that shit again in one day. He could take on whole countries full of ninja, yet he met his match in planning weddings. After that horrible incident was over, he and Yuki decided to take a walk around the village while his clones finished up the paperwork for the day. Kami, how he loved shadow clones. They looked like the ideal couple walking down the street. The villagers and ninja alike would bow and smile in their direction. This man had saved their lives from the terror of Yagura and had given them a safe place to live in that was impossible to find without having a specific replaced seal already on them. And if any of his ninjas were to try and leave the village, he would immediately be notified through his seals, and these could only be deactivated by himself. He would give them a chance to go back and continue being a nin, become a civilian, or be wiped from the face of existence. There would be no leaving the village with any of its secrets. If one chose to become a civilian, then they would have their mind cleared of any of their signature seals and jutsu that one could only learn in a zoo. Of course so far nothing like that has happened, and he hoped that it would never have to happen. Anyways, as they were walking, Naruto noticed 3 10-year-old children walking towards him and his wife. "Hey little ones, is there something you would like to tell me?" asked Naruto as he lowered himself down to his point of view. He knew that children preferred it when they looked them in the eye and got down to their size. "When I grow up, I'm gonna take away that hat of yours and become the greatest Uzukage ever," stated the child in the middle as his friends to his sides nodded their heads with smiles on their faces. "I'm gonna grow up to be the greatest strategist," stated the one on the right, pushing up his glasses causing them to shine with some random light and a sparkle on the side. "And I'm gonna be one of the greatest kunoichi ever," yelled out the girl to the left as she did a peace sign with a huge grin on her face. Though the statement got a confused look on Naruto's face. "Oh, and why not the best?" asked Naruto with a confused look on his face. "Because I know that there will always be someone out there better than me, and I just have to train hard to make sure there is less and less of those people out there," stated the girl with a smile on her face. In response, she got her head and her friends' heads rubbed by Naruto and a bone-crushing hug from a certain vixen screaming out kawaii. No longer able to refrain from doing so since the beginning of the conversation. "You are a smart girl for your age, and to all of you, don't ever give up on your dreams and train hard. I look forward to the day I hand you my hat. Got it, Gaki?" said Naruto with a grin on his face. The academy students immediately did a cheer and went on their way to do whatever it is they were going to do. Of course this was the moment a certain vixen of Naruto's decided to tease him a little bit. You can look into the face of what can be considered impossible odds for normal people, yet when facing 3 kids that look at you in admiration you start to freak out. Don't try to deny it. While you may have put up a good front, I could tell by your heartbeat that you were freaking out," stated Yuki with a grin on her face as an embarrassed blush spread across Naruto's face. And it stayed that way for a few moments before Naruto finally had enough and simply flashed them to their destination and tickled her sides to oblivion. Very few people knew this, but Yuki was extremely ticklish and just about every point in her body could be used against her in a tickle war, which was happening right now just as they crashed onto the couch. "Hey, don't have sex at your in-laws' house," yelled Mai as she noticed them tickling each other and knew how this would probably end if the boy's change in tickle spot was any indication. His right hand was moving higher and higher up the inner of her thigh while his left hand was going higher up her chest. At least her statement got the reaction she was looking for. Naruto and Yuki shot away from each other with rather large blushes on their faces. While they were both rather shameless to an extent, they weren't really too keen on having Mai watch them have sex. "So Mai-chan, how's your day been going so far?" asked Naruto with only a light shade of pink dusting his cheeks now. While he may have merged with Okami and become a lot more shameless than before, he wasn't one for open exhibition unless it was simply Yuki giving him a simple blow job in the middle of work. "Well, it was going pretty good until I see you to flash into my home and begin the preparations for having sex on my couch. As you can probably imagine, that can really ruin someone's mood," stated Mai with a smile that was all too innocent as an image of a demon appeared behind her. "You can explain," tried to explain Yuki as even she began to sweat a little bit. Whenever Mai got angry, she knew you only had 2 options. Option 1 was to try and explain things to her hoping that she understood and spared you of her wrath. Option 2 was to simply give up and hope she didn't kill. Of course there was a third option available only to a certain Zabuza Momoki. Too bad it seemed they might have to put up with option 2. Now with Hikari, Sayuri, Hinata, and Fugaku. Currently Team 7 was escorting their client to his home in order to protect his family as well in case Gato decided to target them as well. Hinata and Sayuri were traveling in relative silence, though one could see the small smile on Sayuri's face if they really looked. Fugaku was currently glaring at a certain redhead for disobeying orders while said redhead was shrinking away from his glare. Literally, somehow her body was actually shrinking under his gaze as if hoping to disappear. Luckily for her, they had just arrived to Tarzuna's house. Unfortunately for them, however, what lay before them was not a positive sight. When they arrived at the house, they saw that everything inside was completely destroyed, and Tarzuna noticed that 2 people were missing. His daughter Tsunami and his grandson Inari were gone. Dun. I think I'll just end it there and have you all suffer wondering what happened to the 2 and why I made this chapter so short. But I can't do that, so I just have to power through and get this chapter done, since that was what I set out to do. With Tsunami and Inari, Where are we? Where have you taken us? Yelled out Tsunami, demanding to know where they were. She was currently hugging her son close to her body as she felt him cry into her chest. While she wasn't much better, she had to try to be strong, at least for him. Oh, you two are simply my hostages, if you will, and will remain to be until that damn bridge builder either stops his project or until he is dead, whichever comes first. And since according to a few of my subordinates he seems to have some rather strong bodyguards of his own, it seems like it will be the former. Don't worry, you won't be harmed much, said Gato as he left, laughing as the two had fearful expressions on their faces. They had no hope now. Their father might have brought ninja with him, but at this point they couldn't believe that they would be able to stop Gato. Gato was unstoppable. Gato was undefeatable. Gato controlled them. With each thought the light in their eyes slowly died away. Let's hope that they can be saved before the light completely goes out. With Zabuza and Haku, both were now walking through the broken town filled with the broken souls of the citizens of Wave. They were hidden under hedges and were also wearing cloaks covering their entire bodies except for their eyes. As they viewed the destroyed town around, they could not help but feel their hearts reach out to them. Of course, this only made them want to kill Gato even more now. They were about to try and sense Gato's location using Haku's sensor skills until they saw a couple of thugs trying to rob a store of all of its earnings, even though it was obvious it hadn't made any going by its condition. So they did the first thing that popped into their heads: killed the first thug that was about to rape the female store clerk and interrogate the one that was about to hit the elderly man. 5 minutes later they came out of the store with a grateful store clerk and elderly man, along with the corpses of two of Gato's men. They then proceeded to head towards Gato's mansion, which in retrospect shouldn't have been missed by their ninja abilities. When they arrived at the front gate they noticed that the mansion itself was a purple color with at least 7 stories in height, along with only 2 overly muscular thugs acting as the guards. To a normal civilian they might have seemed menacing, but to 2 ninjas who could sense that these 2 barely had genin level capabilities, they were nothing more than ants beneath their feet. Hey, where the hell do you two think you're going? Stated guard, mustering up all the killing intent he could, which was barely more than a seasoned genin. Yup, these 2 were fucked completely and they didn't even know it. Oh, if only they knew just who they were messing with, then would have simply sliced their own jugulars right then and there. Well, we were thinking of going inside of that stupid ass mansion, killing anyone that gets in our way, and finally killing Gato, maybe even saving a few people he has trapped in there along the way, said Zabuza with a bloodthirsty grin on his face as both he and Haku dropped their hanjin through their cloaks. The moment the 2 guards saw Zabuza's bandaged face they immediately knew that they were fucked. Doesn't mean that they were just gonna let him kill them with ease, so they did the only thing that they could do: run away like little bitches. Before they could even get 5 feet away they were immediately cut into pieces and painted the rugs on the floor red with their blood. That was the sight the guards on the inside were met with. Needless to say, there were a few that thought that they could take these 2 on. There were a few that actually tried running away, and there were even a few that soiled themselves upon recognizing just who the huge man with the equally huge sword now resting on his shoulder. Let the massacre begin, yelled out Zabuza as he rushed forward towards all the prey in front of him. Haku merely sighed as she decided to simply let her father have his fun. So she simply decided to find a piece of wall and grabbed out a completely black book as she began to giggle perversely as a blush spread across her cheeks. The author of said book was Naruto Okami, and his profits from just that one book he wrote was equal to the total profits Jiraiya made from 3 of his books. Why? Because unlike Jiraiya, Naruto actually had female customers that weren't just his mates. The title of his book was Iro Okami, the rare identical twins situation, and he was currently writing his second book, which has yet to have a designated title. But knowing Naruto, it will probably be better than the first one. Currently inside of the mansion of Gato there were only 3 sounds to be heard: screaming, laughter, and perverse giggling. This continued for another 15 minutes as Zabuza cut down all of the pathetic ants trying to stop him from reaching Gato. Too bad they all failed and merely added to the growing pile of corpses. After another half hour of looking for the right room they found Gato in what looked like his bedroom sleeping. That midget was fucking sleeping. Needless to say, Zabuza was pissed off, so he did what seemed like the logical thing to do. He cut off the fucker's right hand. That sure as hell woke the asshole up. "Ah, my hand! Oh Kami, my fucking hand!" screamed out Gato as he held his new stump that was squirting out blood everywhere. He was then lifted off the ground by his hair and was forced to look at Zabuza in the eye. "Now listen here, you little fucking shit. You're first going to show me where all your prisoners are, and then you are going to show where your vaults are. And if you cooperate I might just spare your pathetic little life." Am I understood? Asked Zabuza with a demon-like aura surrounding him, leaving no room for a denial. You understood, stammered out Gato as he did as he was told. He first showed them his bank vaults and tried to bribe them with his money. That earned him the loss of the rest of his forearm up to his elbow being cut off by Zabuza and then frozen by Haku to prevent him from bleeding out. The only reason he wasn't passed out right now was because every time he passed out Zabuza would simply kick, punch, or stab him awake. So now he was guiding them down into the basement, which had all of the cells filled with prisoners. He had a total of 74 prisoners and most of them were the able-bodied men from the village along with a few wives and children. Some of the women were currently naked while covered in what could only be semen, their eyes showing that they were dead on the inside, having given up to their fate long ago. However, there were a few women that were untouched as of yet, probably due to them being recently kidnapped. Among these few lucky women was Tsunami alongside her son Inari. As soon as Haku had gazed her eyes upon the forms of the raped women, she completely skewered Gato in Hyouten sevens, which froze him wherever they pierced until he was completely converted into ice and was then smashed into pieces via Haku's huge Hyouten hammer. Once she killed Gato, she created a few Hyouten clones while Zabuza created a few Suiten, Mizubunshin in order to take care of the prisoners and victims of Gato's men and Gato himself. The clones then each led a few prisoners at a time and led them out of the mansion and back into the small village. Once the last two villagers were out, Zabuza retrieved a small piece of paper that had a complex seal on it and placed it in front of Gato's vaults. He then placed a small amount of his chakra inside of the seal to activate it. Almost as soon as he had activated it, Naruto had appeared in a flash of silver and black and some white. They saw that Yuki was right beside him and that she was currently trying to stop the world from spinning. Damn it Narukoi. Why you know how much I hate using that damn hydration, stated Yuki as she leaned on Naruto trying to keep from falling on her ass. It took all of Naruto's extreme and merciless training to prevent him from laughing at his mate. Alright, now that you've summoned me, I can only expect that you have completed with phase 1 of the plan? Asked Naruto as he analyzed the vaults, calculating how much of what was in there was from wave citizens and how much was from Gato's own profits. After doing that, a dark grin large enough to nearly split his face had appeared on his face, causing shivers to run up the spines of the citizens of Konoha with a few exceptions. It is time we begin phase 2, stated Naruto before his maniacal laughter began to reverberate around the mansion. Of course it wasn't long till the other three joined him though, with Akari, Sayuri, Hinata and Fugaku. Currently the four Konohanian were trying to calm down their hysteric client, who was currently trying to find anything he could use to go up to Gato's mansion and burn it to the ground after killing the midget bastard who dared hurt his daughter and his grandson. He had nearly done the same thing after the death of his son-in-law Keiza. Of course whatever they were trying to say to calm him down was not working at all. While they could each hold him back with a simple pinky, they didn't feel right in doing so. After all, he was just trying to get his daughter back, and Fugaku could honestly say that he would do the same if their positions were reversed. Look Tarzuna-san, we will get your daughter back. We just need you to calm down and tell us where Gato is and we will do the rest, said Fugaku as he held down the man. Thankfully he finally decided to listen to reason. He stopped resisting them and decided to listen to them. That is until Tsunami and Inari suddenly walked inside of the house, being escorted by one Zabuza and one Haku. At first the ninja were at the ready in case of an attack, while Tarzuna merely rushed towards his remaining family and hugged them with such strength that they would think he was 20 again. You're alright. Are you hurt? What did Gato do to you? If you hurt either of you, so help me, I'll rip out, started out yelling Tarzuna before he was silenced by a frying pan to the head thanks to one Tsunami. Dad, we're fine. These kind ninja saved us from Gato and the girl killed him before our very eyes. Gato is finally dead. We're finally free, said Tsunami as she began to sob tears of joy into her father's chest, wishing that her husband were here now to see this. Thank you too for saving our country. If there is anything Nami no Kuni can do for you, please do not hesitate to ask, said Tarzuna with joyful tears rolling down his cheeks. It was no trouble. We were planning on killing Gato anyway, so saving your family was simply a result of that. But since you're offering, we do have one request, stated Haku as she smiled innocently and spoke in smooth silky voice in order to calm the family down. Of course, anything, yelled out Tarzuna happily. Well, you see, I was was thinking about a trading agreement between our two contracts. Of course the person in charge of this country would meet with our Yuzukage and work out an agreement where both of our countries would prosper. Stated Haku doing that cute girly peace pose. Imagine that pose Kirito did in episode 9 of Sword Art Online 2. God damn, that was scary to watch. If you ask why, then you have not seen SAO1 and must watch it. This of course froze Tarzuna in shock. These ninja first save his family, kill of Gato, and now want to establish a trading contract that could potentially save their country from poverty. This was too much for the old man to handle, and he passed out with his soul escaping through his mouth. And with that, everyone in the room did a faceplant before recovering moments later and simply conversing as they waited for Tarzuna to wake up. Inari was staring at Zabuza with stars in his eyes and asked to show him how he used that amazing sword of his. Tsunami and the girls were talking about those strange things girls talk about when it was just them girls talking. Fugaku simply sat down on the couch and began to drift off. Several weeks later, back at Konoha, it had been 1 week since Fugaku and his genin team returned to Konoha upon the completion of their mission. They had gone straight to the cage tower in order to tell him about all that had happened during their mission and what they were able to learn about the revival of Yuzugakure. Unfortunately, when they arrived, Kushina happened to be there with Minato talking about something completely unrelated to what they were about to talk about. Fugaku and Team 7 reporting on the success of their first C-rank mission. Stated Fugaku immediately going into professional mode. He was inwardly hoping, however, that he would be able to go back to the Uchiha compound in order to explain to them that Phase 2 had begun and that it was time for them to prepare. "Alright, let's hear it," said Minato, not caring about whether or not his wife was in the room. He would come to regret that within a few moments. "Yes, Hokage-sama. However, it would be best if Kushina-san sat down. We learned a few things on our mission that she might want to hear and will be a large surprise for her and you," said Fugaku as he waited for Kushina to do as he asked. Once she did, he began to recount all the events that had occurred during their mission, from their encounter with Zabuza to the death of Gato. When he spoke of Azu, Kushina immediately began assaulting him with questions about who was ruling over her homeland that fell during the Third Great Ninja War. Of course, she was told by her husband to let Fugaku finish his mission report, as she was told about the abilities of the apprentice of Zabuza and the village that they hailed from. They decided that the best course of action was to place her in the bingo book. What worried Minato was the contract that Nami no Kuni and Yuzugakure had signed. This could potentially have a negative outcome for Konoha. After finishing his report on their encounter with Zabuza and his apprentice and telling them everything that happened after they were allowed to leave, Kushina had a troubled look on her face. "Kushi-chan, I know that you're worried about your homeland, but you shouldn't worry. I will send some you along with a few of my personal ANBU for you to locate Azu. When you find it, I need you to give them this envelope. It contains an invitation to the next Chunin exams, which is being held here in a month," stated Minato as he tried to comfort his wife. He understood how much this meant to her, so he would give her the chance to do recon on this revival of Yuzugakure. He would send Hikari, but she needed to be trained for the Chunin exams and she wasn't at ANBU level yet. "Thanks, Mina Koi. I'll be getting my things ready. Send an ANBU for me once everyone is here besides myself," said Kushina as she kissed her husband before heading out the window and towards her home. It would be a few hours before they would leave, and when they did, they'd be in for a big surprise once they arrived at their destination. With Team 7. Currently, Team 7 was having dinner at the Uchiha compound as a small celebration for the completion of their first C-rank mission, which might have been bumped up to an A rank if Zabuza and his apprentice had been sent against them instead of helping them, if you could call it that. They were eating onigiri with bowls of red rice along with some rather delicious maki that Makoto Uchiha was famous for. While she may have been a dangerous woman, that didn't mean that that was the only thing she was famous for. If she wanted to, she could have opened a restaurant that only sold maki and she would have become rich within a month. Within a year, everyone from the elemental countries would have traveled to Konoha simply to get a taste of her delicious food. Of course, her family and friends got this for free, much to the anguish of others, especially a certain perverted sage due to him once peeping on Makoto at the hot springs. Yup, he didn't leave the hospital for a full 3 months and had to go through rehabilitation for a couple weeks due to his muscles atrophying during that time in the hospital. If anyone asked him about it or reminded him about it, he would involuntarily fall to his knees and slam his head to the ground various times, bowing, yelling out, I'm sorry. Each time his head hit the ground, he would then be re-administered into the hospital for severe concussions. So that seems like it was quite the interesting mission. You four are so lucky. When I was a genin, the first mission we got was the damn tour mission. That fucking cat was so annoying. I swear that the only way it could have outrun Ninja would have been if it was the boss summoned for the cat contract, stated Makoto with barely hidden jealousy and a cute pout on her face. This of course caused her family to sweat drop at her actions while the rest simply chuckled. Congratulations Imuto on your first mission as a genin, and Two-san, are you thinking on nominating them for the Chunin exams? Asked Itachi as he ate his Pocky that was somehow the same flavor as the food they were eating. Of course they had all gotten used to this by now, so no one commented on it. Of course Itachi, do you even need to ask? They are some of the finest ninja this village has ever seen, and they are only genin. If I could, I would nominate them for the Junin exams, but thanks to the requirements needed for the possible promotion, stated Fugaku stole one of Itachi's Pocky as punishment for asking such a stupid question. And of course Itachi was now crouching in a random corner of the living room with a cloud of depression over his head, raining down Pocky of sadness. And once again, since this was a regular occurrence, no one questioned this. Anyways, thanks to Itachi inadvertently reminding me about the Chunin exams, I need to give you three the forms for the exams so that you can sign them and so that I can turn them into the Hokage, said Fugaku as he gave each of his students a pink paper that only had room for a signature, blood sample, and chakra sample. Within 10 seconds of the documents leaving his hands and entering the hands of the girls, the documents were once again placed in his own hands. After blinking a few times, he chuckled and then placed them into his pocket. I should have seen this coming, thought Fugaku as he continued to eat his wife's deliciously made meal. After dinner at the Uchiha household, it had been a few moments ago when the members of Team 7 that were not of Uchiha blood had left towards their respective households. It had also been a few moments ago that the house of a certain family of Uchiha had been emptied. The only thing signifying their leaving was a certain staircase missing all of its steps, revealing a passageway hidden beneath. The entire hidden base stretched throughout all of Konoha. Why under all of Konoha instead of just the Uchiha compound? Why, that's simple. The Uchihas weren't alone in their support of Naruto. There were others who believed in him. There were others in Konoha who believed that Konoha was a mere shadow of what it once was. There were those that believed that it was time for Konoha to be redeemed for its transgressions. There were those that were willing to do what was needed in order to bring back Konoha's honor. After all, what is a more honorable way to die than through the throes of battle? These bringers of justice, these preachers of equality, these people of the shadows all called themselves by one name. Their names were Hikage no Shisai, or the priests of the shadows, for they were the ones that were born in the shadows of Konoha and thrived within it. They lived within the shadows and they became strong through their suffering. They were taught the way of the true shadows, not the shadows that the leaders of the villages claimed to be. Shadows did not shine in the spotlight. Shadows were not heroes told about in stories. Shadows hid in the darkness waiting for the time to strike. Shadows did not fight with egos or fairness. Shadows fought without remorse. Shadows fought without mercy. Shadows fought without restraint. And most of all, shadows fought without weakness. Each and every shadow wore the same uniform. They wore black skin-tight long-sleeve shirts with black gloves. On the left arm were pieces of armor similar to the kind worn before the creation of the hidden villages, while the right arm was covered in white bandages. The same armor was worn on their chests and abdominal regions. They also wore black skin-tight pants that was also covered in the same armor. For footwear they wore black combat boots. On top of all of that, they wore black cloaks that completely covered their body and had seals placed on it to hide their chakra signatures, their heartbeats, their set, their very existence. The last piece to their uniform was the robotic metal mask resting on their faces. Its glowing red eyes and menacing look, along with the random bursts of steam that were released from the sides of the mask, caused most that laid their eyes upon it to shake in terror. They were standing in a semicircle, a total of 13 members per set within their order. They were all standing in front of a throne that soon began to be covered in darkness until a figure was revealed. This figure was completely different from the others in the room. The figure was basically shirtless and wore a fur-long coat to somewhat cover his chest. He wore black gauntlets with strange red leather wraps on them. He wore black pants with black combat shoes, his hair reaching to just below his shoulders with equal parts of black and silver. Covering his face was a mask resembling that of a fox. He had 2 wolf ears on top of his head and 10 wolf tails moving behind him with a life of their own. One ear was silver with a black tip while the other was black with a silver tip. The tails were all silver with black tips. This man was their leader, the one who showed them the truth of this place and taught them about the secrets of the shadows after living within them for so long. This man was both their leader and teacher, friend and, only to one, a lover. He was the one they owed a great debt to and they were each determined to fulfill it. "Greetings Okami-sama," said each of the members as they got down to one knee, the mark hidden beneath their bandages glowing ever so slightly. This mark was the mark that symbolized their group. "Rise," stated their leader without any emotion. "Now I believe it is time for the meeting to begin. Firstly, as you all should have known by now, is that the second phase of the plan has begun and that it is time to begin Konoha's fall into hell. However, there is a slight annoyance that will need to be dealt with. It seems as though Orochimaru has decided to invade Konoha during the Chunin exams with the help of Suna. I will prevent this. This will not hinder any of you in any way, so I recommend each of to move forward as planned," stated their leader. "Hi!" rang out through the hidden chamber. As they all began to leave, one of them was called back in order to speak to the leader of the cage. "No Shisai, remove your mask," said simply the fox-masked wolf. The member did as it was told and removed its mask, allowing its hair to cascade in front of her chest. Her black hair as beautiful as the night sky, unblemished by any stars. "You have served me well along with your family. Do not worry, for they will be spared," soothed the leader as he let his hand affectionately rub her cheek. "You need not fear for their safety, for they will be protected. Besides, they need only to travel through our tunnels to arrive to a zoo. So don't worry, my dear." That's the end, guys. If you enjoyed, then like, subscribe and leave a comment down below. This is Maelstrom signing off.